Imagine becoming one of the richest men alive, having private jets ready at a moment's notice, owning luxury mansions scattered across the globe, controlling companies that operate worldwide. Yet, at the very end of your life, your biggest regret has absolutely nothing to do with money. It wasn't a failed business venture. It wasn't a bad investment.
It was a regret money could never, ever buy back. This is the story of Edward Whitmore, a man who seemingly had everything the world could offer, but whose greatest regret came far, far too late. Today, we're going to look closely at the architecture of his life. We're going to slow down and trace how a beautiful dream can slowly morph into a cage.
You see, Edward wasn't born rich. To understand his end, we really have to look at his beginning. He grew up in a small, freezing wooden house in a quiet little town. His father worked grueling long hours at a factory, while his mother cleaned houses just to scrape together enough to pay the bills. Some nights, dinner on their table was nothing more than bread and a little bit of soup.
Then came one freezing winter evening. An 11-year-old Edward overheard his parents talking in the quiet of their home. His father, heavy with exhaustion, whispered, "I wish I could give them a better life." That single, heavy sentence resonated through the cold air, and it changed the boy forever. That moment birthed a childhood promise. At just 11 years old, Edward vowed, "One day, I'll become so rich, my family will never suffer again." It sounded like such a beautiful, noble dream for a young boy to hold on to. But sometimes the dreams we chase become the very prisons we live in. As Edward grew, that childhood promise hardened into an absolute obsession. He studied harder than anyone else around him. While his friends were outside playing football, he was inside studying the mechanics of business. While others enjoyed their carefree weekends, he worked. His drive was relentless. By the time Edward was 23 years old, he had started his first company, and it failed. So he dusted himself off and started another. It failed too. Two crushed dreams early in his journey. The people around him laughed. His own relatives mocked his ambition. They told him, "Get a normal job." But Edward absolutely refused. He was driven by an unshakable, burning belief that success belonged exclusively to those who never stopped trying. And he didn't stop. As the years passed, his obsession finally bore fruit. One successful company multiplied into 5, and then those 5 escalated into 20. Suddenly, everything in his life changed. By 40 years old, Edward had attained the ultimate title, the self-made billionaire. Paints the picture in your mind. He had acquired everything money could buy: luxury cars in the driveway, private jets on the runway, vacation homes dotting the globe. His name was featured prominently on magazine covers. Television pundits praised him. On the outside, his life was absolutely flawless. He had the admiration of the public, and elite business schools were studying his methods. Young entrepreneurs desperately wanted to be him. But inside his own home, his family was quietly disappearing. These are the irreplaceable milestones Edward sacrificed: a daughter's dance recital. He promised her, "I'll be there." But an important meeting came first, and he missed it. His son's graduation, sacrificed for another business trip. His wedding anniversary, canceled. Again. Over time, his wife stopped complaining, not because she accepted his absence, but because she had simply given up. One evening, she quietly packed her bags. Edward looked up from his work and asked where she was going. She smiled sadly and delivered the words that would haunt him forever. "I'm leaving the man I married because all that's left is a businessman." The door closed, he looked at the empty house, and then he opened his laptop again. The years continued to pass into his 50s, and the agonizing paradox of his later life was simple. His wealth tripled, his companies expanded across continents, making him richer than ever before. But the bigger his business became, the smaller his actual life became. His phone rang every single minute of the day, but never from his children. When his birthday arrived, he received hundreds of business emails from colleagues, partners, and assistants. The amount of family calls he received, 0. One evening, Edward stood completely alone in his enormous mansion. 40 rooms, a sprawling swimming pool, a private cinema. It was luxury beyond human imagination. Yet, standing there in his golden cage, the loudest sound was a deafening silence.
For the very first time in his life, standing utterly alone in the middle of his luxurious empire, he asked himself this haunting question: was this really success? And deep inside, the profound truth he had ignored for decades finally answered him with one crushing word: no. But this is not where Edward's story ends. In part 2 of this explainer, Edward's health will suddenly collapse. A single conversation in a stark hospital room will change everything. He will write one heartbreaking letter, make one final wish, and leave behind a lesson that changes thousands of lives forever.